My name is Arden Vale, 22 years old. We were born 3 minutes apart in a Denver hospital with fluorescent lights and a nurse who said, 2 stars, like she was predicting a constellation. At home, the constellation split. Tiffany got the sun. I learned to read by the light that leaked around her edges. We lived in a sleek condo that always smelled like citrus cleaner and phone chargers. Mom, Nancy, ran a marketing firm from the kitchen island. Dad, Douglas, coded in a glass-walled office that reflected everything but me. From the outside, tidy, successful, untouchable. Inside, the math never balanced. When we were 5, Tiffany pointed at a tutu in the mall, and it appeared in a bag. I pointed at a flyer for a kids' coding club, and Mom never looked up from her phone. Too expensive, Victoria. She always used my full name when she was ending a conversation. We can't afford extras. Extras. Ballet shoes from New York were essentials. My curiosity was a luxury item she didn't stock. By 10, I was emailing myself YouTube links about Python and teaching a hand-me-down laptop not to crash while Tiffany took private lessons under a chandelier. Mom posted to Instagram with the caption, "My little ballerina." I won a math ribbon in 7th grade and laid it on the counter like an offering. Mom asked if I could keep it down because Tiffany needed to rehearse monologues without the clinking. I learned to wash dishes like a ghost. The day the line broke, I was 18 and the dishwasher was humming. Late. After another list of chores, Mom slid across the counter to give Tiffany time to focus. I went upstairs for water and paused halfway when I heard my name said like an apology for an inconvenience. "Douglas, if we only had Tiffany, life would be so much easier," Mom whispered. Dad didn't argue. He just offered the excuse he'd been saving for years. "Victoria is so independent. She doesn't need us like Tiffany does." I stood in the hallway holding my breath, trying not to exist too loudly. Something cracked and stayed cracked. That night I pulled a plain red notebook from under my pillow and wrote the sentence down exactly as I heard it. Then I kept writing. Chores logged like inventory. Trophies ignored, scholarships unmentioned, photos where I stood blurry at the edge of Mom's frame. The notebook turned pain into data, and data into a kind of armor. High school turned into college, and the script didn't change. The props got more expensive. Tiffany's closet filled itself by algorithm. Designer jeans, cashmere, a new iPhone in rose gold, while Mom handed me a thrift store gift card with the smile she used for budgeting. I built a weather app on that ancient laptop, got it featured on a local tech blog, and brought it to Dad like a kid with a seashell. He skimmed, said, "That's great, Victoria," and asked Tiffany if the drama coach liked her new headshots. I stopped asking to be seen and started keeping receipts. Mr. Simmons, my coding teacher, called me a game changer during a senior presentation. At home that night, Mom posted a slideshow of Tiffany's chorus solo with 10 heart emojis and a caption that might as well have read, "No duplicates found." When I won a national AI scholarship for an urban energy model, I folded the letter back into its envelope and put it under my mattress. Silent triumph felt safer. College boiled down to one final farce. I graduated valedictorian in a navy gown that didn't quite fit, read a speech about building equitable systems to a room that cheered for strangers, and looked over rows of empty seats reserved for family Vale. Mom and Dad were in Miami with Tiffany, 5 days of beach and steak and captions. Family paradise, #ProudMom. I stared at the blank chairs like they were coordinates on a map to nowhere. Later, in my room, I taped the program next to a sticky note that said, "Believe your own evidence." The night they got back, the condo glittered with new luggage and a tan that looked like good lighting. Tiffany floated in, wearing a sundress that knew it was expensive. Mom's gaze snapped to the white Tesla parked at the curb outside like a flash had gone off. "Whose car is that?" she asked, her voice clean as a blade. "Mine," I said, holding the key fob Heather gave me in my pocket like a talisman, a gift. Everything in the room tightened. Mom's lips went thin. She dialed before I could breathe. "Heather, a $40,000 Tesla? Are you serious?" Heather's voice came through firm, steady. "I gave it to someone who earned it." Dad stepped in with a reasonable tone he saves for deals. "Share with Tiffany. Her auditions." "No," I said. "I'm keeping it." Mom's eyes sparked. "Don't be selfish. We're a family." I slid an envelope across the table. MIT, I said. Full ride, tuition, housing. I leave next week. For one delicious second, no one could find their lines. Tiffany's phone stopped filming its own reflection. Dad blinked, like the word whole in full ride offended him. I didn't tell them the rest. That the letter was the first thing in 4 years that felt like a door opening toward me. That the night before, I'd drafted a post I hadn't yet dared to publish. Every receipt, from the red notebook translated into nouns and verbs, stripped of pity, lined up like code that only ran forward. Later, after the house finally stopped vibrating, after Tiffany went to her room to pick a fight with a mirror, after Dad shut his office door and Mom poured a glass of wine like absolution, I stood in the doorway of her office and looked at the glow of her laptop. I don't know what I was looking for. Maybe proof that I hadn't invented the pattern that patterned me. I clicked through folders labeled with intent. Clients, home, personal. In personal, a thread from years ago with a sender I barely remembered. Heather Walsh. Heather wrote, Nancy, you're blind to how you treat Arden. It's unfair. You don't have to dim one daughter to make the other shine. Mom's reply was a sentence that ended a family. Stay out of my business. The thread died there, but next to it, another subject caught my eye. 529 transfer. A draft. Unsent. I opened it. Blank body. Address line. Financial advisor at... My name sat in the subject line like an afterthought attached to money that might have been mine once. My chest went tight. I printed nothing, downloaded nothing, just stared until the screen blurred and the words turned into the hum of the dishwasher in my head. I found Heather's address in her email signature, Boulder, a tidy street name that sounded like promise. I wrote it on a torn page from the red notebook in my smallest, neatest handwriting and folded it until it fit under my tongue. The condo, immaculate, watched me put the note in my pocket like a clue. The next morning, before anyone was awake to rearrange the story, I left for the bus station with a backpack, the Tesla key I still wasn't ready to parade, and the scrap of paper that read Heather Walsh, Boulder. Past the glass office, Dad's screen glowed with lines of code that never made room for me. Past the kitchen island, Mom's phone face down, still warm from performance. In the hallway, a shadow of our height, Marks climbed the paint. Their handwriting had always been prettier, but mine would get me out. On the bus, I made a list just to hear it in my own head. Tell Heather. Ask about 529 transfer. Learn what love sounds like when it doesn't need an audience. I pressed my forehead to the glass and watched Denver slide away slick and shining as a lie told well. Somewhere up northwest, a door was going to open and not ask me to shrink to fit through. The bus rattled north, carrying me away from everything familiar, away from the polished condo where love was rationed by likes, and Tiffany's voice filled every room. Out the window, Denver blurred into smaller towns, then into stretches of highway and dry winter fields. I sat with my backpack clutched to my knees, the folded scrap of paper in my palm growing soft from my grip. Heather Walsh. Boulder. I whispered it like an address could be a spell. Boulder was cooler, quieter, the air smelling faintly of pine and roasted coffee. I followed the GPS through a neighborhood of modest houses with tidy gardens and wind chimes that sounded like calm. Heather's house was a small craftsman, blue shutters, and a porch swing that creaked slightly in the breeze. My pulse quickened. What if she slammed the door? What if Mom had poisoned her too? I almost turned back, but then the door opened, before I'd even knocked. A woman in her late 30s stood there, dark hair tied back, soft cardigan sleeves pushed to her elbows, a mug of tea in her hand. Her eyes, warm, curious, landed on me and softened further. You must be Arden. My throat tightened. You knew I was coming? I hoped you would someday, she said simply. Then she stepped aside. Come in. Inside smelled like cinnamon and code. Bookshelves overflowed with tech manuals and sci-fi novels. A half-built circuit board sat on the kitchen table beside an open laptop. It felt alive in the way our condo never had. Messy, human, filled with evidence of someone who actually lived there. She poured me tea without asking what I wanted and gestured to the chair across from her. I followed your work, she said. You were on that student AI showcase online, weren't you? The energy model? I nodded, stunned. You saw that? Of course. You remind me of someone I used to know before she forgot herself chasing approval. Her smile flickered, bittersweet. Nancy wasn't always like this. The name hung between us like static. She said you stopped talking, I murmured. That you disappeared. Heather's eyes darkened. She cut me off. I told her she was favoring Tiffany. She didn't want to hear it. She said I was jealous. She gave a small, rueful laugh. I wasn't jealous. I was furious for you. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I'd imagined this conversation for years, but the real thing broke me open. No one's ever said that out loud before. She built an empire on pretending problems don't exist, Heather said gently. You and I, we look at problems and solve them. I smiled through tears. I guess coding runs in the family. Heather leaned back, studying me. Show me what you've been building. I hesitated, then slid my tablet across the table, opening the app I'd been perfecting. An AI model predicting urban energy use based on real-time weather data. She navigated it quickly, nodding. Elegant, she said. Efficient. You have instinct, Arden. You think in systems. No one had ever said that to me without comparison attached. I learned most of it on YouTube, I admitted. Mom said camps were too expensive. Of course she did. Heather's expression tightened, then softened again. You're self-taught. That's resilience, not lack. For the first time, I felt the sting of pride instead of pain. We talked for hours about machine learning frameworks, about her freelance work designing eco-algorithms for startups, about the quiet satisfaction of seeing logic turn into beauty. By the time I glanced at the clock, it was past sunset. I hadn't realized how long it had been since I'd felt safe enough to lose track of time. When I stood to leave, she disappeared down the hall and returned with a small box. One more thing, she said, placing it in front of me. Inside was a key fob with a silver Tesla logo that caught the kitchen light. It's parked out front. I blinked. You're joking. Her gaze didn't waver. You deserve something reliable. Consider it a graduation present from the aunt you should have had all along. I can't. Heather, it's too much. It's not charity, Arden. It's investment. The world already took enough from you. The key was cool in my palm, heavier than it looked. Mom will lose her mind. Heather gave a knowing smile. Then it'll be worth every penny. That night, I couldn't go home. I drove the Tesla through Boulder's quiet streets, the dashboard glowing blue in the dark. The hum of the motor was so smooth it felt unreal, like gliding through silence itself. My reflection in the windshield looked older, steady, capable, like someone about to start over. By midnight, I parked outside Heather's house again. She was on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, waiting with 2 mugs of cocoa. You'll need to hide it, she said as I sat beside her. She'll demand you hand it over. I know. I traced the edge of the cup, steam curling into the air. She always does. She doesn't see boundaries as love, Heather said quietly. But that's what they are. She looked at me. Promise me you'll keep setting them. I nodded. I will. And I meant it. The next few weeks blurred into something golden. Weekends at Heather's meant coding marathons, debugging sessions that stretched past midnight, takeout containers scattered between laptops. I started working part-time at a tech library near campus, organizing coding workshops for kids, shelving books on AI. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid enough for gas and dignity. Each evening when I left, the Tesla gleamed under the streetlights like a small rebellion. Heather taught me the things Mom never cared to: tax brackets, freelance contracts, how to negotiate without apologizing. She told me stories of her own battles with Nancy, how she'd once refused to sign a client deal that underpaid her, and Nancy called it career suicide. Heather smiled. Turns out integrity ages better than charm. I believed her. One night she looked up from her screen and said, MIT's calling your name. I laughed. That's a fantasy. Then let's make it a plan. She helped me polish my portfolio, refine my research proposal, and by spring, I'd submitted everything. Weeks later, when the acceptance letter arrived, full ride, housing, stipend, I couldn't stop shaking. I called Heather first. She screamed so loudly the phone cut out. At dinner that night, I slid the letter across our family table like evidence in a case. I got into MIT, full scholarship. Mom didn't even look up from her phone. That's nice, sweetheart. Tiffany, how was rehearsal? I watched the words die midair. I folded the letter back up and said nothing. Tiffany grinned, telling some story about applause and spotlights, and Dad nodded along, not hearing the silence he helped build. That's when I knew this life wasn't fixable. It was designed this way. Later that night, I sat in my room, the acceptance letter beside the Tesla key, both glowing faintly under my lamp. They felt like tickets out of a story I didn't want to repeat. I packed my laptop, the red notebook, and a single suitcase. Tomorrow, I told myself, I'd drive the Tesla home, face them, and tell the truth. Tomorrow, they'd finally see me. By the time the sun rose over Denver, I was already on the road. The Tesla hummed beneath me, smooth and defiant, its dashboard glowing like quiet confidence. I rehearsed the conversation in my head, me calm, composed, presenting my achievements like evidence, them realizing finally what they'd ignored all these years. It played perfectly in my mind. But when I turned into the condo driveway, the fantasy broke. The garage door was open. Tiffany's luggage was spilling out onto the floor. Makeup bags, sequined costumes, 3 pairs of identical heels. Dad was trying to fit another suitcase into the trunk of Mom's SUV while she scrolled through her phone, voice sharp. "The flight leaves at 2, Douglas. We don't have time for this." I stepped out, the car door clicking shut behind me. They turned at the sound. Mom froze first. "What?" she said slowly. "Is that?" I held up the key fob. "A gift. From Aunt Heather." Her tone sharpened. "A Tesla?" "Model 3. It should have been a proud moment. Instead, it felt like setting off a grenade. Mom's color rose as she pulled out her phone, her voice climbing into that icy register that always meant control. "Heather, it's Nancy. A $40,000 car? Are you serious?" Heather's voice through the speaker was calm, even kind. "Nancy, I gave it to someone who earned it." "You're undermining me," Mom snapped. "Tiffany needs transportation for her auditions." I laughed softly. "She just got back from Miami. How many auditions are there in a resort?" Her eyes snapped to me, cold and precise. "Don't start." "Why not?" I said. "You already did." Dad tried to step in, palms out. "Let's not make this a thing. The car can be shared." "It won't be." My voice came out firmer than I expected. "It's mine." Mom's mouth opened, ready to cut that down, but I spoke first. And I got into MIT, full ride, tuition, housing, stipend. I leave next week. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Even Tiffany stopped mid-scroll. Dad blinked. You're leaving?" I set the acceptance letter on the kitchen island, sliding it toward them like evidence at a trial. "I'm not asking permission. I'm telling you." The silence cracked finally, with Tiffany's scoff. "So what? You think you're better than us now?" I met her eyes. "No, I just know I don't have to be less than you anymore." Mom's jaw clenched. "You're being dramatic, Arden. Families share. Tiffany's success helps all of us." "That's the problem," I said quietly. "You don't want a family. You want an audience." She laughed, brittle and small. "You're just like Heather, self-righteous and ungrateful." That hit deep, but not the way she intended. I picked up the letter again, folding it with care. If being grateful means shrinking, then yeah, I'll take self-righteous. Her voice rose, sharper now. "Don't talk to me like that in my house." I smiled faintly. "Funny. You always called it a family home, but it's never really felt like mine." For a long time, no one spoke. Then Dad sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. "Can we just be practical? That car is excessive. Tiffany could use it for—" "Stop," I said. "You can't keep rearranging fairness like furniture. It's not yours to move anymore." Mom stared at me like she didn't recognize the shape of me. Maybe she didn't. I wasn't the quiet girl holding dishes and swallowing her voice anymore. I was standing in the light she'd never let me step into. I took out my phone. My thumb hovered over the post button, my LinkedIn draft that I'd written in pieces across late nights, the favoritism, the forgotten scholarships, the unacknowledged wins. It wasn't revenge, it was record-keeping. The truth, finally public. Mom caught the motion and her eyes widened. "What are you doing?" "Fixing the narrative," I said. "Arden, don't—" I pressed post. The sound of silence after a truth lands is the loudest thing in the world. Within seconds, notifications buzzed. Likes, comments, messages. My screen filled with support from classmates, professors, even Mr. Simmons. "Proud of you for speaking up. Always knew your talent deserved better." Mom's phone started pinging too. I saw her name light up on her work chat, messages flooding in faster than she could mute them. She looked at me, panic flickering behind her fury. "You just ruined my reputation." "No," I said. "I just stopped letting you ruin mine." I picked up my bag, slung it over my shoulder. Tiffany's voice followed, high and brittle. "You can't just walk out like this." I turned to her, calm now. I already did. And then I walked out the door, the key fob cool in my hand, the morning sun hitting the Tesla's white paint like a mirror. I saw myself in the reflection, tired, steady, free. As I drove toward the highway, the city skyline came into view. Glass, steel, and somewhere within it, my own story finally standing upright. The comments kept coming, hundreds of voices saying, "We see you." For the first time, I believed them. The interstate unfolded ahead of me like a clean sheet of paper. Every mile between Denver and Boston felt like a sentence in a chapter I was finally writing myself. The Tesla's hum was low and constant, like a heartbeat keeping time with the road. I didn't play music. I didn't need to. Silence finally sounded like peace. At a rest stop somewhere in Nebraska, I opened my phone again. My post had gone viral. Thousands of likes, hundreds of comments. Some from classmates, some from teachers, a few from people I didn't even know. "You're brave. Your story hit home." I had a Tiffany too, and then one from Mr. Simmons. "The world needs women like you in tech. Proud doesn't even begin to cover it." I sat there in the parked car, hands trembling, the blue glow of the screen washing over me. It wasn't the validation I'd wanted from mom or dad. It was something cleaner, quieter, the confirmation that I wasn't invisible. By the time I reached Boston 2 days later, the city looked exactly like I'd imagined. Glass towers, brick dorms, and air that hummed with possibility. The MIT campus pulsed with energy, students hauling laptops, scribbling equations on whiteboards, arguing about quantum mechanics like it was gossip. For once, I fit right in. My dorm room was small, bare walls, a narrow bed, one window facing the Charles River. But when I dropped my suitcase and unrolled my blanket, it felt more like home than the Denver condo ever had. I set my Tesla key on the desk beside the red notebook, the two symbols of everything I'd taken back, mobility and memory. Orientation week blurred by in a rhythm of lectures and introductions. In my machine learning seminar, a girl with copper hair and wire-framed glasses slid into the seat beside me. "Cassandra Hull," she said, extending her hand. "Seattle computer science, caffeinated and underslept." "Arden Vale," I replied. "Denver, same symptoms." We clicked instantly. Cassandra was sharp, sarcastic, and quietly kind. The kind of person who didn't compete to be seen, but noticed when others weren't. We became partners in every lab, coding late into the night in the library until the janitor flicked the lights as a warning. One evening, after a particularly brutal debugging session, she leaned back in her chair. "You know, you're kind of famous." I blinked. "Excuse me?" "Your LinkedIn post," she said, grinning. "It popped up on my feed before I even knew you were you. Half the department's seen it." My stomach twisted. "Oh, God." "Relax," she said. "It's not gossip. It's inspiration. You said what most of us are too scared to say, that sometimes family isn't the safe place we pretend it is." I stared at her for a moment, the fluorescent lights buzzing above us. "You really think that?" She shrugged. "I know that." For the first time, I laughed without bitterness. A month passed, and Boston began to feel like an earned second skin. My AI project gained traction. Students downloaded it for research, a local sustainability startup reached out for collaboration, and Professor Allen pulled me aside after class. "Keep at this," he said, his tone serious. "You're building something that matters." When I told Heather on our weekly call, she nearly cried. "I knew it," she said. "Your mother spent years pretending to be the only one with a brand, and here you are, creating a future out of algorithms." Her faith steadied me. Every Sunday night, her voice was my compass, reminding me that love could be quiet and unconditional. She mailed me small care packages, coffee beans, sticky notes filled with encouragement, a photo of the Tesla parked outside her house with a note, "It misses you, but I'm keeping it charged." And then one afternoon, my phone buzzed with a number I hadn't seen in months. Mom. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. "Arden," she said softly, her voice thinner than I remembered. "Can we talk?" I didn't say anything. "We saw your post," she continued. "Your father and I," her breath caught. "We didn't realize how much we hurt you. Tiffany's struggling too, you know. She dropped out of her acting program. Maybe we could fix things. As a family." Fix things. As if you could just reboot a lifetime of damage. I let the silence stretch. Outside, a train passed, its whistle cutting through the dusk. "You didn't call when I left," I said finally. "Not once." She hesitated. "We thought you needed space." "You thought I'd come back," I corrected. "You always think I'll come back." Her voice cracked. "You're still my daughter." "I know," I said quietly. "That's why I hope someday you'll see me as more than your shadow." Before she could reply, I ended the call. I sat there for a long time, phone heavy in my hand, feeling something between sorrow and relief. There was no anger left, just distance measured in growth. That night, Cassandra and I attended a hackathon on campus. We built a real-time traffic optimization app, coded through the night, and won first place, $5,000, and a meeting with investors. When our names were called, Cassandra grabbed my hand, yelling, "You did it!" But in that moment, standing under bright lights, I realized something deeper. I'd done it for me. Weeks turned into months. My project hit 40,000 downloads, and the startup offered me a position after graduation, lead AI developer. When I called Heather to tell her, she laughed through tears. "You're unstoppable, kiddo." "Thanks to you," I said. "No," she replied. "Thanks to you finally choosing yourself." And she was right. I stopped checking Tiffany's Instagram. I stopped waiting for apologies that would never arrive. I started living, not as the older twin or the afterthought, but as Arden Vale, who'd rewritten her own story line by line. One night, Cassandra and I sat on the dorm roof, the city glowing below us. She asked, "Do you ever think about going back?" I looked at the skyline, the reflection of my laptop screen in the glass. "No," I said. "I'm already home." Spring settled over Boston in soft rain and sudden bursts of sunlight that made the river flash like liquid glass. By then, the Tesla sat parked near campus, its hood speckled with pollen, its battery still half full from drives to the harbor when I needed to breathe. I'd never once turned back toward Denver. Emite had a way of blurring days together. Lectures, coffee, code, sleep in 2-hour doses, but I was thriving. My startup role had turned into a real contract. Lead developer, Sustainable Systems Lab. I was 22, running a small team of engineers twice my age, and for the first time, power didn't feel like rebellion. It felt earned. Cassandra and I rented a tiny 2-bedroom near Kendall Square, all cracked windows and whiteboards on every wall. We filled the kitchen with coffee mugs, sticky notes, and laughter. She'd joke that I wrote better variable names than love letters. I'd remind her that clean code was an act of devotion. Sometimes, late at night, I'd sit by the window with the red notebook, the one that started everything. Most of its pages were full now, each slight turned into a data point, each victory annotated like an equation finally solved. I didn't hate Mom or Dad anymore. I'd rewritten them too, not villains, just limited variables that couldn't scale. Then one evening, an email notification broke the calm. From Tiffany Vale. Subject, please read. My finger hovered before opening it. "Arden, I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, but things fell apart after you left. Mom's clients pulled out after your post. Dad's been trying to freelance, but it's not enough. I left my acting program. I couldn't afford it. I thought I'd be angry at you forever, but lately I keep thinking maybe you were right. About everything. I'm sorry. I mean that. I don't know who else to talk to." I read it twice, my chest tightening. For years, I'd dreamed of this. Recognition, regret, the apology Tiffany swore she'd never give. But seeing it written out, stripped of envy, just made me feel tired. The part of me that had wanted revenge had already gone quiet. Cassandra found me staring at the screen. "Family," she asked gently. "Yeah. Bad?" "Not exactly, just late." She nodded, understanding more than I said. "You don't owe them closure." "I know," I said, "but maybe I owe myself peace." That night I wrote back, "Tiff, I'm glad you reached out. I don't hate you. I never did. But I can't fix what Mom and Dad broke between us. You'll have to do that with them. I wish you the kind of peace it took me years to find. Arden." I didn't expect a reply, and none came. But it felt like deleting a file I'd been afraid to open, freeing space for something better. A few weeks later, MIT hosted a Women in Tech Summit. I stood backstage, heart pounding, waiting to give a keynote I'd written at 2 a.m. on a dare from Cassandra. Heather flew in from Colorado for it, sitting in the front row with her laptop closed and pride written across her face. When they called my name, the applause sounded like a second heartbeat. I told my story, not the viral post, not the scandal, but the pattern beneath it. I spoke about bias and belonging, about how some of us have to build our own stage before anyone hands us a mic. I said, "Visibility isn't a gift, it's construction." The audience rose to their feet. Heather's eyes shimmered. Cassandra whooped loud enough for everyone to hear. Afterward, in the quiet green room, Heather hugged me tight. You changed the room, kiddo. I just told the truth. That's always the hardest code to write. I smiled, and the only one that runs clean. That night we celebrated in the Tesla. 3 coffees, 1 city skyline, and no ghosts in the rearview mirror. Heather asked if I'd ever go home, and I shook my head. Denver isn't home, I said. It's origin data. Useful, but not destiny. She laughed. That's my engineer. Months later, I'd start my full-time job at the startup, move into a brick apartment near the river, and watch my app cross 100,000 downloads. Cassandra and I would launch a side project mentoring girls in STEM. We'd name it Project Constellation. I'd send Heather the first prototype. She'd reply, 2 stars, remember? Sometimes, late at night, I'd scroll back to my original LinkedIn post, the one that started it all. The comments had slowed, the world moved on. But one line I'd written still felt like a compass. Family isn't who claims you, it's who refuses to dim your light. I closed my laptop, the city reflected in the glass, every window a small flickering reminder that some lights never asked for permission to shine.